Every era of the Shinobi has asked the same question. How do you survive a world built to kill you? But the archive has uncovered a deeper truth, one buried beneath jutsu, beneath bloodlines, beneath the myths themselves. Regeneration, immortality, vitality, these were never techniques. They were never miracles. They were versions of a system patched, corrupted, rewritten, and stolen across centuries. Now, we decompile the entire lineage of life itself, from the divine source code of the Otsutsuki, to the native hardware of Hashirama, to the desperate biohacks of Tsunade, to the virtual machines of Orochimaru. This is the audit of Vitality Recursion. And once you see the pattern, you'll never look at healing the same way again. To understand how a human like Tsunade could eventually hack the laws of biology, we must first decompile the original master file. Before there were jutsu, before there were seals, there was only divine integrity. For the Otsutsuki, regeneration isn't a technique you activate, it is a fundamental law of their existence. In the archive's terms, they don't have a healing factor, they have data persistence. This is the karma seal. It isn't just a mark, it is a master system image, a backup of an entire divine being's biological code. When placed on a host, it begins a total system overwrite. It deletes the host's local files, their DNA, their memories, their soul, and replaces them with the high-fidelity hardware of a god. It is the ultimate insurance policy against deletion. If Kaguya was the raw energy, then her son Hagoromo was the operating system. He realized that the source code of the Otsutsuki was too powerful for the world to handle in its raw state. Hagoromo's greatest achievement wasn't just peace, it was the creation of chakra. By converting raw divine energy into a programmable language, he built the interface. He gave humanity the tools to code their own reality. But once you turn a divine law into a programmable language, you open the door for hackers. Hagoromo created the system, but he also created the vulnerabilities that the later generations would eventually exploit to simulate immortality. As the operating system of chakra settled into the world, it found its perfect host. In the era of the warring states, the archive identifies one specific anomaly, a biological unit so powerful it functioned as a perpetual motion machine. Hashirama Senju. In the history of the archive, he is the only human to possess native support for god-tier vitality. We call this the passive engine. While every other shinobi must manually run a healing program, Hashirama's restoration was a background process. It ran 24/7, requiring 0 hand seals and 0 conscious effort. His body didn't just heal, it refused to stay damaged. This is the Yang standard. Hashirama's cells were so densely packed with physical energy that they became the universal hardware upgrade for the next century. From Madara to Obito to Danzo, every major system admin in history has tried to graft this hardware onto their own bodies. They weren't just stealing power, they were trying to install a better processor. This wasn't a technique he learned, it was Asura's legacy. As the reincarnation of the sage's younger son, Hashirama inherited the body of the sage in its purest form. He was the highest fidelity reprint of the original Otsutsuki hardware ever recorded in a human vessel. But this level of hardware was a single unit license. When Hashirama died, the native source of this vitality vanished with him, leaving the rest of the world to figure out how to emulate his power using only their low-res biological code. As the centuries passed, the archive records a steady decline in signal strength. The biological godhood of the ancients began to fade into myth. For the later generations, the source code was no longer a birthright, it was a locked file. This is the signal decay. By the time of the 5th Hokage, even the Senju bloodline had lost its native support for passive healing. Tsunade didn't inherit her grandfather's perpetual motion machine. She was born with the same limited hardware as any other mortal. Her cells didn't possess the instructions to repair themselves on sight. To survive, she developed the ultimate biohack, creation, rebirth. Since her body wouldn't heal naturally, she wrote a script to force it. By manually accelerating mitotic division, she simulates Hashirama's vitality through sheer force of chakra. It is an overclock. She is pushing her cellular processor to 400% capacity to achieve a god-tier result, even though the hardware was never designed for it. But running an overclock requires immense power, more than a human body can generate in real time. This led to the creation of the Byakugou seal. In the archive's records, this is the external buffer. For years, the user trickle charges their excess chakra into a dedicated partition on the forehead. They are building a battery that can be mounted to the system when the main power grid fails. This leads to the democratization of vitality. Sakura Haruno is the proof of concept. With zero ancestral hardware, no Senju cells, no Otsutsuki blood, she used pure technical precision to install the open source patch. She proved that if your scripting is perfect, a user-level Shinobi can run God-level software. But every hack has a price. Because this isn't native hardware, the cells can only divide a finite number of times before the system crashes permanently. Humans have successfully hacked their way back to immortality, but they were trading their future to pay for the present. While the Senju line struggled to patch their failing biology, another power approached the problem from a completely different angle. They moved beyond the cellular level entirely. They stopped trying to fix the hardware and started managing the metadata. This is the Rinnegan protocol. In the archive's records, the Rinnegan represents the shift from biological repair to information management. To a Rinnegan user, a body isn't a collection of cells, it's a collection of data points. And data, unlike flesh, can be restored. Enter the Naraka path. This is the archive's system restore point. The King of Hell doesn't perform surgery. It doesn't accelerate cell division. Instead, it treats physical damage as a file error. By comparing the damaged unit to a soul backup stored within the King of Hell, the system re-renders the object. It is the ultimate undo command. The Shinobi emerges from the mouth fully restored, not because they healed, but because their physical state was reset to its last stable version. But the most powerful command in this protocol is the outer path, Rinne Tensei. If the Naraka path is a simple undo, the samsara of heavenly life is a total system reboot. This is the final extremity of data recovery. The user converts their entire personal signal, their total life force, into a transmission capable of restoring deleted files. It pulls souls back from the pure lands and resynchronizes them with their original hardware. But a reboot of this magnitude requires a massive power surge. The archive notes that for non-native users, the cost of this restore is usually the deletion of the admin themselves. To bring the dead online, the user must go offline forever. While the Senju patched their biology and the Uchiha managed their metadata, one rogue entity decided the entire system was obsolete. To Orochimaru, the source code of the ancients wasn't a legacy to honor. It was a limitation to be bypassed. Enter Orochimaru's hot swap. In the archive's records, this is the most invasive fork of the regeneration protocol. Orochimaru realized that no matter how many software patches you apply to a human body, the hardware eventually reaches its end of life. His solution was to treat the physical body as a disposable, removable drive. He doesn't bother with cellular repair or data restoration. If the local hardware becomes corrupted by age or mortal injury, he simply initiates a system migration. This is the living corpse reincarnation. It is the ultimate virtual machine. By migrating his software, his consciousness, his soul, and his accumulated data to a fresh unit, he resets his biological clock to zero. The previous body is discarded like outdated tech. However, even this hack has a compatibility error. The archive notes that a host body can only sustain Orochimaru's massive parasitic signal for roughly 3 years before the hardware begins to reject the software. He is trapped in a cycle of constant upgrades, forever searching for the ultimate hardware, the Uchiha or the Senju, that can finally host his code without crashing. Orochimaru achieved immortality, but at the cost of his humanity. He is no longer a biological being. He is a ghost in the machine, jumping from drive to drive, waiting for the hardware that never breaks. We have decompiled the history of restoration. What we found wasn't a linear path of progress, but a record of systemic loss. Shinobi history is the story of a world losing its native signal. We began with gods who existed as pure energy, moved to a man who grew forests from his own heartbeat, and finally arrived at a generation of humans who must spend years trickling chakra into a forehead seal just to stay alive for 5 extra minutes on a battlefield. Every restoration jutsu we've analyzed is actually a desperate attempt to bridge the gap between god-tier software and mortal hardware. The world is trying to run the original scripts of the Sage of Six Paths on processors that are no longer built to handle the heat. This leaves the archive with one final inquiry. Is the Byakugou seal the pinnacle of human achievement, a triumph of technical skill over biological limitation? Or is it merely a desperate hack, a patch applied to a dying signal, trying to hold back a crash that was destined to happen the moment the Otsutsuki left this world? The data is yours to interpret. The archive remains open for those who seek to decompile the truth. If this deep dive into the Senju engine helped you decompile the mysteries of the Naruto-verse, make sure to sync with the channel. Like, subscribe, and join the Discord to help us research the next log. Transmission ending, terminal closed,